Hello and welcome to Bright Talk. I'm Deb Calvert, and today I'd like to address sales managers, sales trainers, and others who support sales professionals. Regardless of your title, if you're spending time with sellers and offering something you call sales coaching, then this presentation is for you. And it's also for you if you think sales coaching might be a good idea for people on your team. We'll be covering a whole lot of information that will help you to do it right. I think in the interest of full disclosure, I have to admit that there's something that has really been bothering me lately. What's been bothering me is that sales managers are tasked with so many jobs and so many different roles that it's practically impossible for them to be effective, as highly effective as they want to be as sales managers and sales coaches. And then on top of that, sales managers in most companies don't get the training and development and support that they need to transition into a sales manager role. And then when it comes to sales coaching, well, there's even less training, and there's only this vague expectation that somehow they should know what to do and how to do it. So that's what this webinar is about. It's about addressing the unreasonable expectations that every sales manager or sales trainer or sales business partner is automatically capable of being a sales coach. Before we go any further, I think I will pause just a moment to properly introduce myself. As I said, I'm Deb Calvert. I'm the author of the bestseller, Discover Questions, Get You Connected, and of the award-winning blog, Connect to Sell. Be sure to link with me on Twitter or Google Plus or on LinkedIn. You'll see my handle there on screen along with my email address. What I do is I conduct sales coaching, sales training, and sales research, as well as working in the leadership space. And those two disciplines, they converge in my current work, which you may have heard about. It's the movement to stop selling and start leading. Like most of my work, it's based in research directly with buyers. In my corporate role in a Fortune 500 company, and in the 10 years since then, since I went into business here at People First Productivity Solutions, I've trained and I've coached nearly 100 sales coaches. And I've also coached hundreds of sales reps and sales managers. So I see firsthand the struggles, and I'm really sympathetic to what's going on out there. Now, there are some very valid reasons that senior sales managers want there to be more sales coaching throughout the sales organization. For example, the average ROI on an investment in sales coaching is pretty impressive. According to the ICF, the International Coach Federation, the average return on the initial investment in coaching is 7 times greater than the investment. Now, this is applicable, that statistic is applicable to all types of business coaching, like executive coaching and coaching for personal or team effectiveness. But, as you might expect, the return on sales coaching has been shown to be even higher. But there's a big if. The ROI on sales coaching is even higher if the sales coaching is truly coaching and not other activities that often get labeled as coaching. So that begs the question, what are the right sales coaching activities? And we'll keep this at a very high level for now, and we'll keep drilling it down as we proceed here. Here are the big themes to keep in mind when considering what does and what does not yield the maximum impact that sales coaching can have. So first, a sales coach who is highly effective is skilled in promoting self-discovery. In other words, the seller discovers for himself or herself rather than the coach telling them the things they ought to know. Another hallmark of highly effective coaching is that the coachee, the seller, is open to feedback and change. So the environment and the coaching connection has to be optimum so that they are comfortable being open to that feedback. Additionally, when it's most effective, coaching is focusing on skills development, not just on sales performance, which is a more managerial type function. In the places where coaching works the best, coaching is routine. It's not something that only happens once in a while. It's not an afterthought. It's not what's done to the people who are performing in a low point. It's routine. It's for everyone, and it's regular. And not only that, there's a framework. It's not haphazard. There's a very specific way that coaching is done. And when all this is in place, sales coaching produces strong results, especially in your mid-level performers. Now, here's what one study found. This is from the Sales Executive Council. And in the Sales Executive Council's research, the measure was the amount of time a sales manager who was doing quality and bona fide sales coaching activities, they were measuring those sales managers, and they were looking at the amounts of time spent on that kind of coaching and then correlating it to the team's percent to goal performance. The number of hours they chose to define as low, they're in the left-hand bar, that was 20 hours or less per month. The average amount of coaching they designated was 23 hours per month, and the high was 35 hours or more per month. Now, that is spread across an entire sales team. This is the amount of hours measured by a sales manager performing these coaching activities. And what they found, as you can see here, is that the optimum per manager per month is 35 hours or more, because that's what yielded results. For a strong team that is exceeding goals by 7%, a sales manager would spend about 35 hours per month on pure sales coaching activities. In that study, by the way, this was for a manager span of control with 6 to 12 sellers, and those 35 coaching hours per month were either in field alongside the seller or on the phone alongside the seller who was making calls, and it also included time spent, coaching time, spent to follow up and reinforce training with role play, planning, and other coaching activities. Now, what a difference, right? 20 to 35 hours. What a difference 15 hours a month can make. If we break it down, 35 hours is less than 2 hours per day or less than 10 hours per week. We'd say that it's about 20 to 25% of a sales manager's time on the job. It's important to remember, though, that these were quality coaching hours, so there's a qualitative and a quantitative influence at work here. Spending time on activities that are labeled as coaching won't give you the impact that spending time on true coaching activities will. So hang on, we'll get there to really explain more and more about that distinction. But first, some additional and very recent information that helps to make the case for sales coaching. This is from the MHI Global Sales Best Practices Study in 2016. And as you can see here, the highest performing sales organizations are reporting more sales management time that is dedicated to sales coaching versus the other sales organizations that participated in the study. And there's another distinction that is called out in this study. The world-class, highest-performing sales organizations in this study employed a formal coaching process. They made very clear distinctions between sales coaching and other kinds of activities that are often confused with sales coaching. They had a formalized coaching process with coaching conducted by people who had developed these coaching skills, because that's where the real impact comes from, is from coaches who have specific kinds of coaching skills. Now, interestingly, recent research from CSO Insights, their 2015 Sales Management Optimization Study, that affirms what we saw on the previous slide from the SEC. CSO Insights concluded that, and I'm quoting now from an article, which you can access in the attachments tab of this Bright Talk, but they concluded that sales managers who work with a formal coaching process, who have been developed regarding their coaching skills based on this process, and who have the right coaching guidelines and data at hand, can coach in an effective way with 20 to 30% of their time to improve win rates of forecasted deals up to 17%. So big improvements, and you'll notice that the amount of time coaching resonates from what we saw in the other study about a quarter of a sales manager's time being spent on sales coaching. Now, in addition to the very obvious benefits of sales coaching to increase sales, there are many other documented and significant benefits of coaching. Done properly, good coaching achieves these things that you see here on screen. And what this means to you and to your organization is that sales coaching can reduce time on non-selling activities. It can boost your sellers' problem-solving abilities. It can keep your sellers positive even when they're being redirected to work in different ways. And good sales coaching can improve retention so you're not constantly hiring and onboarding new sales team members. So you see there's something in this for you in addition to revenue production. But I can't say this emphatically enough. To experience all these benefits, it has to be bona fide sales coaching. So now it's time to clarify what that means and how coaching is different from activities that seem very similar. On screen now you see the three most common misunderstandings. These are the three biggest areas of confusion, and also the three areas where the most opportunity is lost when it comes to sales coaching. If you have viewed sales coaching as something that's done purely for performance, then you're missing the opportunity and the yield if you were instead doing sales coaching for the continual development of your sellers. And if you're thinking of sales coaching as getting in the game and doing the selling yourself, well, then you're not coaching. That's like the difference in any sports team. If you're getting in the game, you're a player. Coaches stand on the sidelines. They observe. They pay attention to what the players are doing so they can help them to continually develop. And coaching is different from managing, from mentoring, and from training. And that in and of itself, that last statement, that can be the most difficult to understand. So I want to spend some time really getting granular to define what those differences are. As you look at all the things that a sales manager, a sales trainer, the folks who are supporting sales people, the things they do really come in two different veins. They come in the area of directing the activities of the sellers. Directing the activities is the work that it's required to handle the problems of the day, to handle the meeting of the performance standards, to handle hitting goal. Right? That's in and of itself the essence or the definition of managing. And mentors also direct. Mentors advise. That's the meaning of the word. On the other hand, there's opportunity to do something a little different, to facilitate. In other words, to draw out from the seller something that he or she could be learning or doing differently to facilitate those discoveries. And that work is largely done by people who are coaching. In fact, the root word of coaching means to extract. And trainers. Trainers condition. They run drills and skills practices. They help information to be understood and applied. So if we think in these two broad categories of directing the activities of sellers and facilitating the learning and growth of sellers, then you have a more well-rounded approach. One of those jobs, the one about directing, that focuses on getting today's work done. Obviously, that's really, really important. But the other three, mentoring included, they focus on developing additional skills to get the long-term contributions of the sellers maximized. Okay, let's keep drilling this down. Now, sales managers' jobs have become overladen with a lot of other kinds of functions, but purely sales managing, right, that includes these obvious things. It includes setting goals, expectations, and performance standards. It includes providing the resources needed to get the work done. Sales managers conduct informational meetings on products or on initiatives. They provide recognition and rewards to motivate the team. When there are new tasks and responsibilities, they figure out how that work's going to be distributed. And ultimately, with all of that, sales managers focus, by the very nature of their job, on the attainment of goals. That work matters. Anything else I say here is not intended to take away from this work which most would agree is the primary responsibility of a sales manager. Now, sales mentors, they do things a little differently. They do different kinds of work. What sales mentors do, and this could be a sales manager who is stepping in as a mentor, or it could be someone else entirely, like a more seasoned sales rep in your organization. But what mentors are doing is sharing their own expertise. They're demonstrating how to do something. When they teach, what they're doing is they're instructing based on their own higher level of experience. They might have people who are job shadowing them, and certainly they can answer questions based on their subject matter expertise. Sales managers are often thrust into the role of sales mentor as they do demonstrations on sales calls, as they answer questions, as they tell stories from their own experience, as they solve problems and tell sellers how to do things the way that they themselves know will get the work done. Okay, all of this is part of the sales manager role, but we're breaking it down just to get some real clarity. The next one I want to show you is sales trainers, because sales trainers, whether this is the manager or if this is a discrete function, what's happening when someone is training is that they're breaking new information down. They're making it manageable. They're delivering that information, those product bits of information, the selling skills bits of information. They're delivering that in a way that it can be heard and understood and applied. They're also hopefully facilitating some skills practice so that the information being delivered can be internalized and used by the individual. And they're helping the sellers to work through and to calibrate what they've known before with what they're learning now so that they can reflect on it and integrate it into what they're going to do. Now, all of that is different from sales coaching. Sales coaches are doing something very different, and this may surprise you. It often does surprise people when I introduce this information to them because they've not ever seen an example of it. But pure sales coaching does this. A coach asks questions of the seller, and the purpose of asking those questions is to extract information that the seller already knows and to facilitate the seller having some self-discovery around new ways they could apply that information, or awareness that there might be something they don't know that they'd like to know. And coaches do this through questions because mentors are the ones who are telling, and mentors are the ones who have superior levels of subject matter expertise. Coaches are tapping into the information, the confidence that needs to be built inside the seller. And that's why coaches also listen really well. They actively listen, and they play back key information that they've heard from the seller or that they observed on the sales call so that there can be an even greater degree of critical reflection, because from that acknowledgement of what's going on, from that self-discovery, a salesperson is much more ready, willing, and able to set some goals and to plan for themselves how they will develop the skills they need. Because coaching is all about empowerment. It's about getting the seller to be autonomous in acknowledging what they need, having recognized it, wanting to set goals to achieve at a higher level, and to find ways that they can do that so that a sales manager doesn't constantly have to be the one figuring that out. Let me just show this to you one other way to bring out an additional point. In this little box model, we're looking at what is the difference. And you see here now where the emphasis would be. So looking across the two quadrants at the bottom, this is about the mentor and the manager. What they have in common, mentor and manager, is that they are focused on their own abilities. They focus on their own abilities and ways they can impart what they already know to the seller. Whereas the coach and trainer are focusing instead on the abilities of the seller, the learner, and trying to find ways that they can maximize those strengths and identify those gaps so that the seller is ready, himself or herself, to do something about it. The other thing you see in the box model here is the format of delivery. Right? Trainers and managers, they often, over on the right side, they often are delivering to a group. They're delivering to the people in their sales meeting or their training class. The message they give, even when it's one-on-one, is largely the same over and over again. whereas coaches and mentors, they tend to be a little bit more focused on the one-on-one interaction. And because of that, they are able to tailor and customize what they are offering directly to the seller that they're currently working with. So all these distinctions, they really matter. That was a pretty high-level overview. Here's one more snapshot just between the manager and the coach. Different priorities lead to different responses. And I've given you 3 situations here. You'll see what they have in common is that sales managers are focused on the needs of the group and the company. That requires them to be focused on performance and to be expedient on getting things done. And they should have a desire to make every sale. Sales coaches, on the other hand, are focused on the needs of the individual and his or her development of critical skills. That requires, wait for it, this is a tough one, that requires missing some sales, not making some sales, in order to fully understand the seller's gaps and then to promote self-discovery so mistakes that are made will become learning opportunities. Coaching requires doing less for the seller and drawing him or her out more to develop and demonstrate skills that they can use autonomously. Sometimes sales managers do and think for sellers. Sales coaches don't. They challenge sellers to do and think for themselves. Now, what I'm describing here for sales coaches requires a different mindset and a different skill set, too. And that's why not everyone is cut out to be a sales coach. And there is no shame at all in that. It's just a fact. It's no different from me not being cut out to be an opera singer. I don't have the skill set nor the mindset, and I certainly don't have the desire to pursue that avocation. And that's okay. Now, obviously, in this brief time that we have together, I won't be able to teach anyone how to be a sales coach. I'll give you some alternatives for learning that later. But in the meantime, let me give you a high-level overview only of the most critical skills, because they aren't quite as simplistic as they appear to be at first glance. My intention is it's to help you sort out for yourself whether or not these are skills you have and want to apply a little differently as a sales coach, or if these are skills that you want to acquire, or if these are skills that, frankly, are outside your wheelhouse and not of interest for you. For some, what I'm about to describe regarding sales coaching and the related skills, it's going to be unappealing. Let that be a hint for you that sales coaching may not be your strong suit. And remember, that's okay. It just means that you'd be well served by finding a partner who's more adept at sales coaching. That will free up your time to manage, mentor, or train. So taking these one by one, and what I want to do here as we breeze through this high-level overview, these are some critical coaching competencies, and I'm going to selectively call out some that are not as self-explanatory as the others. I'll also make mention of the ones that are most misunderstood and misused. Everything I'll be showing you here is based on coaching for development, not managing for performance. When it comes to planning skills, coaches, well, they don't plan the sales call. They don't plan the time that they're going to spend with the seller. Instead, they ask the seller to do that work. That way the coach can see what's being set up effectively and what's not. But at the same time, the coach is also trying to set the seller up for success. So there might be, for example, a pre-call planning time where the seller is working with the coach prior to going in field. Whereas managers might just hop in the car with the seller, a coach is going to spend more deliberate and focused time to gauge how the seller prepares and then to promote self-discovery around improving preparation. Prior to being in front of a customer on a four-legged sales call, the coach is also going to set some expectations with the seller. If this is going to be purely an observational call, the coach tells the seller that up front and then sticks to that no matter what. Obviously, then, that means that these probably shouldn't be high-stakes calls When it's a high-stakes call and you must make the sale, well, that's the time that you bring the sales manager who might be involved in closing the sale. Now, there is a time when a coach might want to make a demo call, a demonstration. And if that's the case, the seller and coach should predetermine that too. By the way, I do recommend that less than a quarter of a coach's customer-facing time be spent on demo calls. In other words, for every 4 calls that you are with the seller and the customer is on the call too, only one of those out of 4 or less should be a demonstration, because frankly that is what sales managers can do, and there's less learning by sellers on these kinds of calls. And if you do too many of them, there's a risk. If you're doing demonstration too much, you can cause an erosion in a seller's confidence, and they may even become overly reliant on the sales manager or sales coach who's stepping in to demonstrate or take over as a mercenary closer. Now, there are skills. For all this strategic planning, there are skills that a sales coach needs, because this is about being proactive and not reactive. You're not going to be reacting in the moment on the sales call because you've already predetermined what your role will be. So proactively, you might also need to be prepared to bite your tongue and to allow mistakes to be made so that you can see how the salesperson is going to handle their own mistakes and have even more fodder for coaching. The next group of skills that are really, really important for a coach, and this is a big one, it's listening skills. Now, if you saw this slide and instantly tuned out, come back. But if you did, if you tuned out because you think you've heard it all before, then let that be a clue to you that you might not be cut out to be a sales coach. As a sales coach, you have to be fully tuned in and completely present right there in the moment at all times. You have to be able to pick up on subtle cues, even emotional ones. If you miss things that the seller sees, you're going to have a hard time convincing the seller that you bring value as an observer. After you observe sales calls with your active listening all the way tuned up, you'll be playing back what was said by the buyer and by the seller, and you'll need to be accurate. Hyper-focused listening is essential. Here are just a couple of tips that you might not have heard before. The best listeners focus on listening for what's different, not what's already familiar. Sales coaches who model this by picking up on things that sellers miss do a wonderful service for those sellers. They demonstrate why listening matters so much, and they inspire sellers to improve their own active listening skills. And by focusing on what's different, sales coaches are usually the ones that pick up on something the seller missed. Sales managers often aren't able to pick it up because, like the seller, they're listening for what's familiar or what's the green light that they came in hoping for. Sales coaches, conditioning themselves to listen for what's different, they see other avenues that could be pursued, or they see objections before they're voiced out loud. They have a keen insight because they have deliberately turned up their active listening and focused on paying attention to glean what's different, what's not expected. Now, in a coaching role, unlike a managing role, you can't let emotions or adrenaline or anticipation take over. Your listening abilities would be compromised if you were trying to get into the game, or if you're mentally willing the seller to do what you're thinking would be the right thing to do. So as a coach, even when you give feedback, you need to actively listen. Managers and mentors, they do more telling and more sharing of their own experiences. Coaches don't do that. They ask questions, and they listen, and then they ask more questions to help a seller discover for himself or herself what it is that could be done differently. Now, although we're breezing through, I did want to share a couple of models with you. This one's a model for listening. It's a reminder that it's not just hearing passively with your ears, but it's listening actively with your brain and even with your heart at the level of empathetic listening. To do that, you need to act. You need to pay close attention. you need to check for comprehension and keep yourself attuned so that you're not blurring what's really being said with what you assumed or what you believed from something else. And then, only then, are you talking. And as a coach, when you're talking, it's mostly to ask questions and to respond to promote self-discovery. So speaking of questions, this is also a really important tool in a sales coach's repertoire. Good coaching questions are a whole lot like good needs assessment questions. You'll use questions to make sellers think and stretch and determine their own course of action for improvement. Your questions will not be manipulative or oversteering. You know, some people, this is often misunderstood, some people think that coaches should ask questions in an effort to force agreement. If you hear yourself asking a lot of questions that start with phrases like, don't you think it would be better to, or how about you try it this way? Well, if you hear yourself saying those things, let it be a clue to you that you might not be cut out to be a coach. Or maybe you've just never heard that those are not the kinds of questions that coaches ask. And I'll give you some alternatives to frame this up for you as we proceed. All right, so along with crafting good, thought-provoking questions, experienced and effective coaches ask questions in a predetermined order. There's a method to this. What I'm showing you now is the GROW coaching model. This comes from Sir John Whitmore, the preeminent expert on workplace coaching. It goes in this order, GROW. First, you're asking questions to understand the goal, not your goal, the sales manager or sales coach. Nope, this is the goal that the seller is going to set. And when they set it for themselves, they're going to be more likely to want to pursue it. So questions, facilitating the acknowledgement of a goal. And then the reality check. Well, what are the current conditions, the circumstances, the obstacles, whether they are real or perceived? What's in the way of attaining that goal? Let's talk about it. Let's work it out. And then what are the options? The O, what are the options for being able to work through those challenges so that you are able to attain the goal? And finally, once all of that is sorted out, then it's the W, what's next? And this is where the seller puts together the action plan, including the resources and the additional training they might need to access, the support that they might need from the coach or manager. These questions, asked in this order, are highly effective in getting people to take responsibility and accountability for their own growth and development. And if you're following this simple path, you can expediently move a seller from clarifying what they want to achieve to creating an action plan for achieving it. And it's all self-directed because as a coach, you asked questions. Here's one more clue that we ought to acknowledge. If this idea of others setting their own course is not aligned with your preference to tell them what to do and how to do it, well, then you may not be cut out to be a sales coach. Now, here are some sample questions. These are arranged for you in the GROW coaching model. Before the call, let's say you were doing some goal setting, and then you wanted to do a reality check to deal with any real or perceived barriers. And what you'd be talking about with your questions, the way that you'd ask them, is that these wouldn't just be a vague sense of direction, but an actual goal. And it would be a real discussion about the options. You'd be prompting the seller to think of and explore various ideas. And all the while that you're doing that, not only are you building their buy-in, but you're also helping them to gain confidence and competence so that they can work more autonomously. As you're imparting this thought process to them, you're helping them to think this way about the goals they are going to set on their own, even when you are not with them as the coach. And then you'd get to the plan. And since it comes from the seller, there's ownership. And there is a much, much greater likelihood of follow-through on these actions. And it's this sort of framework that makes coaching, good, quality sales coaching, able to have the impact that it does, getting people above goal, getting higher levels of performance, getting to world-class levels of achievement. It's not the coaching, the time spent on the coaching where the magic happens. If that were true, then it would only be the sales coach who was capable. But it's the multiplier effect. It's the coaching and what it imparts to the individuals and the way that they grow and are able to attain at higher levels on a long-term basis. That's where the magic happens. All right, one more high-level skill here, our big overview, and that's around giving some feedback. Coaches ask questions primarily, but yes, they also give feedback, and there's a process for this too. And the intention to allow for self-discovery is still the same. Those same kinds of questions that you use in debriefing after a call, and that same sequence about setting goals and determining what will be different next time, right? All of that can apply here as you're giving feedback. Self-discovery is on top of the list because this is different from managerial feedback. Coaches will start by asking the seller, what do you think you did well on the call? And don't let them skip that reflection and don't let them jump straight to what they want to do differently next time. It's important to get this foundation. What did they do well? That's the foundation. It's the behavior that you might want them to recognize so they can replicate it in the next call, but it's also the platform. Their strengths are their platform on which they're going to go after their areas for development. So they need to recognize it. They need to give themselves credit for that. And once they share a couple of positives that they can remember, as a coach, you might like to add one or two. I like to state an observation of something positive and then ask a question like, by the way, why do you think that mattered in this call? Or, tell me more about what led you to do it that way. Because what I'm looking for here is the self-discovery and their ability for that positive not to have been accidental or happenstance, but so that it can become something that they use more frequently. Once they share those positives, and I've given them some feedback on one or two additional, then we are going to move into deepening the understanding of what they could do differently. We're repeating the same process. We're asking them to give one or two areas of improvement. My favorite question for starting that is just simply, if you could rewind the sales call, what would you go back and do differently? It's a non-judging way to ask, and it is pretty important for the seller to be able to pinpoint the place where things started to go awry. So this notion of being able to rewind helps them to replay and recognize the domino effect from their own actions. And then after they give some of their feedback about what they'd like to change, right, you also limit yourself to one or two additional critical key changes that need to be made. And that's also done best with a mix of statements and questions. Well, those are the critical skills, and again, we have just gone very high level. This last skill set and mindset to cover is not so much a skill to develop as one to be okay with. One of the most common questions that I ever hear from sales managers who want to do more sales coaching, and they usually ask this with a bit of a sense of bewilderment, that question is, well, what is it then? What am I supposed to do on sales calls? And I get it, because sales managers, they've always been so good at interacting on sales calls. This is like putting baby in the corner. But it's okay to do nothing except observe and take notes on a sales call. There's tremendously high value in doing that. I do recommend note-taking. It captures important information. It redirects the energy that might otherwise cause you to leap into the conversation and take over for the seller. It also signifies to the seller and the buyer that something important is happening here. If you, by the way, could never, ever imagine yourself quietly observing the sales call and taking notes about it, then just let that be a clue that you might not be cut out to be a sales coach. The other question that I get a lot from sales managers who aren't yet sales coaching is, so what do we tell the buyer about why I'm here? And I simply recommend an honest answer. I'm here on the sidelines and not in the game today. Like any coach, I can do more observing, and I can offer better feedback if I don't interact much. Keep it simple. Buyers respect this. They do not have negative reactions to people who are coaching on the sidelines. So you're taking notes about what the seller says, you're taking notes about how the buyer answers and responds, and you'll use those notes when you offer feedback. You'll be able to be more specific, you'll be able to be more helpful with notes than without them. Okay, we're thinking now about you as a sales coach. just want to do some recap here. There are some barriers. These on screen are the biggest barriers to becoming a sales coach. Some of these may represent changes that you simply don't want to make. Some are temporary conditions that you could move through. Sales coaching will indeed feel awkward until you've logged a lot of hours doing it. Some of the things you see on screen are misconceptions. Remember, this people development is a means to an end. Coaching is proven to improve sales productivity while also developing people. This doesn't have to be an either-or. But if you feel strongly about any of these, give yourself permission not to pretend that you are coaching. You're doing other important work, managing, mentoring, or training, and that's perfectly okay. There is no shame in any of this if you're not cut out for sales coaching. We need sales managers, sales trainers, sales mentors. We need mercenary sales closers, too, at times. If you're not cut out to be a sales coach, step back and let someone else fill that role, working as an extension of you. Don't deprive your sales team of this valuable support and development. Don't cheat your organization of the improved performance that sellers could be delivering if they received true sales coaching. And if it's not you, well, bring in a trained and certified professional who has logged the hours and gotten the professional credentials. That will help ensure that you get the maximum ROI possible. You can aim for 7 times your investment according to the International Coach Federation. An ICF certified coach has put in the hours and received the training and earned that credential so that they can truly help your sellers. Now here at People First Productivity Solutions, we can help. We have a team of sales coaches. We have a great referral network, and we'd be happy to help find someone who is highly capable and qualified in your backyard, in your industry, whatever's going to be right for you. I personally have been coaching salespeople and training sales coaches for over 15 years. We offer a variety of coaching packages. We do field coaching. We do extended engagements via phone. We do role-playing and strategizing with sellers, even by phone, to boost sales performance. We've worked with sellers in tech, healthcare, medical equipment, insurance, education, nonprofit fundraising, advertising, manufacturing, real estate, automotive, agriculture. We've pretty much run the gamut. So if you think that you have the right stuff, though, and you just need some additional skills training so that you can be an effective sales coach, then please note that I've attached a lot of resources to this presentation. Some of my colleagues in the selling space have offered these support tools to get you started. And on top of that, beginning in October, I will be offering a sales coach training program. It'll be a coach-the-coach program with one-on-one time to develop your skills, plus group time to learn from others who, like you, are learning to be highly effective sales coaches. We'll be doing a lot of role play. You'll be logging those hours so that coaching becomes very natural and easy for you to do, and you'll be extremely effective at it. However, I will only take 12 participants enrolled into the program, and people listening to this Bright Talk Live are the very first ones to hear about this offering. We'll start the mass marketing in about 10 days. Participants who receive complete coaching kits from that program will be the only ones who have that full suite of products that we offer. We'll be developing all sorts of skills, the ones we've touched on here, and a lot more. That program is going to be ideal for sales trainers and sales managers who just want to make a greater impact on sales numbers. So here's what to do. If you think you're interested in that program, just email me directly at the email address you see on screen, debcalvert@peoplefirstps.com. I'm not going to spam you. You won't be receiving a lot of annoying emails about this. I know the program's going to fill up pretty quickly. I just need a way to get information directly to anyone who's genuinely interested in learning more about this. Okay, with that, I want to wrap up. I think we have time for just a couple of questions. I've been trying to weave them in as we've been going here, but these seem like a couple of good add-ons here. So the first one is, are you saying that sales managers cannot also be sales coaches and must only be managing all the time? Now, I may have answered this, but I think it's probably good if I'd be very explicit in my response. No, I'm not saying that at all. Some of the very best sales coaches I've ever known have the job title of sales manager. But they were able to wear both hats and to morph into whichever role was appropriate in a given situation. Those sales managers who are also really good at sales coaching, they understood the differences and they pursued training and skills development to acquire sales coaching competencies. To me, that's actually the ideal solution when and where it's possible. The results in improved seller performance prove that this is a good course for a sales manager to pursue. But I also know that not all sales managers are cut out to be sales coaches. That doesn't make them bad sales managers. When people who are really good sales managers bring in really good sales coaches to complement them, those results are also compelling. So I guess my answer is this. There are multiple ways to get the results that sales coaching can provide, through the sales manager or alongside the sales manager. And one more question is, how much time should be spent on the other, not coaching roles? I think that one probably came as a result of the 4 roles I outlined: coaching, managing, training, and mentoring. And that answer, it's going to be unique to every team. But what works is if you start by allocating the coaching time, dedicate about a quarter of your time to pure coaching activities or bring in someone else who can allocate that amount of time, then mentor or train according to the needs of the team and individuals, and then you'll have to spend 50% or more of your own time, if you're a sales manager, on traditional sales management work. So you can delegate away the coaching and the training and the mentoring, but you have to do the traditional sales management work, the reports, the forecasts, the goal setting, the hiring, meetings, and all the rest of it. Okay, well, the clock says we need to wrap up, so please access the attachments. They'll help take you to the next steps that you need. Email me if you'd like to grow your own sales coaching skills and boost sales production as only sales coaching can. And join me again here on Bright Talk September 7th. We'll be talking about how well-intentioned sales managers may be disabling instead of enabling their sales teams. Look forward to talking with you soon. Be more sales coaching throughout the sales organization. For example, the average ROI on an investment in sales coaching is pretty impressive. According to the ICF, the International Coach Federation, the average return on the initial investment in coaching is 7 times greater than the investment. Now, this is applicable, that statistic is applicable to all types of business coaching, like executive coaching and coaching for personal or team effectiveness. But as you might expect, the return on sales coaching has been shown to be even higher. But there's a big if. The ROI on sales coaching is even higher if the sales coaching is truly coaching and not other activities that often get labeled as coaching. Hello and welcome to Bright Talk. I'm Deb Calvert, and today I'd like to address sales managers, sales trainers, and others who support sales professionals. Regardless of your title, if you're spending time with sellers and offering something you call sales coaching, then this presentation is for you. And it's also for you if you think sales coaching might be a good idea for people on your team. We'll be covering a whole lot of information that will help you to do it right. I think in the interest of full disclosure, I have to admit that there's something that has really been bothering me lately. What's been bothering me is that sales managers are tasked with so many jobs and so many different roles that it's practically impossible for them to be effective, as highly effective as they want to be as sales managers. You'll see my handle there on screen along with my email address. What I do is I conduct sales coaching, sales training, and sales research, as well as working in the leadership space. And those two disciplines, they converge in my current work, which you may have heard about. It's the movement to stop selling and start leading. Like most of my work, it's based in research directly with buyers. In my corporate role in a Fortune 500 company, and in the 10 years since then, since I went into business here at People First Productivity Solutions, I've trained and I've coached nearly 100 sales coaches. And I've also coached hundreds of sales reps and sales managers. So I see firsthand the struggles, and I'm really sympathetic to what's going on out there. Now, there are some very valid reasons that senior sales managers want there to be. So that begs the question, what are the right sales coaching activities? And we'll keep this at a very high level for now, and we'll keep drilling it down as we proceed here. Here are the big themes to keep in mind when considering what does and what does not yield the maximum impact that sales coaching can have. So first, a sales coach who is highly effective, is skilled in promoting self-discovery. In other words, the seller discovers for himself or herself rather than the coach telling them the things they ought to know. Another hallmark of highly effective coaching is that the coachee, the seller, is open to feedback and change. So the environment and the coaching connection has to be optimum so that they are comfortable being open to that feedback, and sales coaches. And then on top of that, sales managers in most companies don't get the training and development and support that they need to transition into a sales manager role. And then when it comes to sales coaching, well, there's even less training, and there's only this vague expectation that somehow they should know what to do and how to do it. So that's what this webinar is about. It's about addressing the unreasonable expectations that every sales manager or sales trainer or sales business partner is automatically capable of being a sales coach. Before we go any further, I think I will pause just a moment to properly introduce myself. As I said, I'm Deb Calvert. I'm the author of the bestseller, Discover Questions, Get You Connected, and of the award-winning blog, Connect to Sell. Be sure to link with me on Twitter or Google Plus or on LinkedIn.